The wind carried the smell of wet stone and rotting leaves across the hollow, where the old church lay in ruin. Its broken spire jutted like a finger pointing at nothing, black against the sinking sky. Deputy Mark Hanlon whistled for Titan, his K9 partner, but the shepherd didn't budge. The dog's ears twitched, his body rigid, his gaze locked on the cracked doorway of the ruin. Mark's voice caught in his throat as he tried again, louder this time, but Titan only let out a low growl. It was then Mark felt it. The silence inside the church wasn't empty. It was waiting. If you like stories told with patience and tension rather than noise and spectacle, consider subscribing. I share these every week, crafted to pull you in slowly, the way a good thriller should. The first time Mark Hanlon saw the ruins, he was still a boy. He and his cousins had dared each other to climb the crumbled walls and press their faces into the yawning dark of the nave. Back then, it was just an old, forgotten skeleton of a church. Nothing lived there but weeds, wasps, and the kind of dam that made your skin crawl. 25 years later, it still stood or slumped in the same clearing, swallowed by briar and nettle. Only now he wasn't a boy with scraped knees. He was a sheriff's deputy in a county where little ever happened, except drunks fighting at the gas station or a neighbor dispute over stolen hens. Still, something about the church had always prickled at the back of his mind, like a story he hadn't finished reading. Tonight, he hadn't come here for nostalgia. The call had come in just after sunset. Local kids, teenagers really, had been messing around out near the ridge, the kind who drank cheap beer until they felt brave enough to break into places. One of them, a girl named Savannah Keller, never made a home. Her friends claimed she wandered toward the church. Just playing, they said. Then she hadn't come back. By the time Mark pulled his cruiser onto the dirt track leading to the clearing, it was full dark. The headlights swept across the ruin's jagged silhouette, making it look less like a building and more like a wound in the earth. Titan shifted in the back seat, ears pricked, restless. "All right, boy," Mark muttered, unclipping the latch on the cage. "Let's find her." The dog bounded out, nose to the ground, tail stiff. The beam of Mark's flashlight cut through the brambles, dust motes swirling like ash. His boots squelched in the damp soil as he followed the dog closer to the ruin. "Titan, heel," he called. But Titan ignored him, drawing up sharp at the arched entry, his body rigid, a growl rumbling low in his throat. Mark stopped, his breath clouded in front of him, even though the night wasn't cold enough for that. He swallowed, flashlight trembling in his grip. "Titan." His voice was steadier than he felt. "Come." The shepherd didn't move. He stood like a statue, ears flat, staring into the black doorway. Mark's pulse quickened. He stepped closer, shining his beam into the dark interior. The light slid across rotted beams, collapsed pews, weeds pushing up through the stone floor. Nothing moved, nothing human, anyway. And then he saw it, at the far end, just beneath what had once been the altar. Something pale, small. "Savannah?" His voice cracked against the walls. No answer. He tried again, louder. "Savannah Keller?" "Sheriff's Department." Still nothing. Titan barked once, sharp and urgent, then fell silent. The sound echoed too long, bouncing off stone until it died in the rafters. Mark felt the old instinct rise in his chest, the one that told him when to step forward and when to hold back. Right now, it told him to hold, but the pale shape on the floor didn't give him that choice. He had to look. He pushed inside, boots crunching on debris. The smell hit him first. Not rot exactly, but something older, heavier, like stone soaked in mildew and candle smoke that had never burned out. He reached the altar, Titan a step behind him, hackles raised. The flashlight beam slid over the floor and froze. Not Savannah, not a body. It was a pile of clothes. A girl's hoodie, jeans, sneakers, all arranged neatly as if someone had folded them. The sneakers were clean, laces tucked in bows. The hoodie smelled faintly of lavender detergent, but there was no girl inside them. Mark swore under his breath, dragging a hand across his mouth. The parents would kill him if he went back with this. Clothes weren't enough. He needed her. And then he saw something else. Beneath the folded clothes, pressed against the stone, was a piece of paper. Yellowed, edges curled. His hand shook as he pulled it free. The writing was cramped, faded ink. He read the first line and felt his stomach twist. "Forgive us, Father, for what we brought here." Titan whined, snapping his gaze up. The dog's eyes were locked not on the clothes, not on him, but on the black rafters above. Mark followed the stare. Something shifted there, a flicker of pale movement. His breath caught. "Who's up there?" His voice rang thin and hollow. Silence. Then, like a whisper dragging over stone, came the sound of something moving deeper inside the ruin. Not fast, not hiding, just there. Mark's skin crawled. He should radio it in, call for backup. Hell, call anyone. But the nearest unit was 30 minutes out, and if Savannah was alive, he couldn't wait. He gripped the flashlight tighter, his other hand resting on the butt of his holstered gun. "Stay close, boy," he murmured. Titan gave no answer, only another low growl as they edged toward the sound. The ruin stretched farther than he remembered, shadows devouring the edges of the beam. The roof above had collapsed in places, leaving only ragged patches of sky where the stars burned cold and distant. Halfway down the nave, Mark froze. Something scratched against the stone. Not a rat. Too deliberate. "Savannah?" His throat was dry. "It's Deputy Hanlon. I'm here to take you home." Silence again. Then a girl's laugh. Hi, quick. The kind of laugh teenagers used when they were trying to scare each other. But it came from everywhere at once. Titan barked, sharp and furious. His claws scrabbled against the stone as he lunged forward. Mark barely held him back with a sharp command. The laugh faded, swallowed by the dark. And then came the whisper. A single word, carried on air that smelled of earth and dust. "Stay." Mark's blood iced. He turned in a slow circle, light trembling across the walls. Empty pews, fallen beams, broken glass. No one, but the clothes on the altar. He swore they hadn't been folded that neatly when he first saw them. Mark stumbled back into the clearing 20 minutes later, Titan pressed against his side like a shadow. The trees swayed in the night wind, their branches rattling like bones. He leaned against the cruiser, chest heaving, trying to slow his breath. The folded clothes were in his evidence bag. The note, too, but not Savannah. Not anything he could explain. He rubbed his face with both hands. His father's voice, stern, tired, echoed in his head. "Don't chase ghosts, Mark. They'll always outrun you." Maybe he should have listened. Titan whined softly, nudging his hand. The dog's fur was bristled, his eyes still fixed on the ruin. Mark followed the gaze. The doorway yawned black, the ruin silent again. But he knew, as sure as the breath in his chest, that whatever had spoken wasn't gone. It was waiting. The Keller house sat at the end of a rutted dirt road, its porch light burning to the dark like a single, desperate eye. Mark parked by the gate, gravel crunching under his tires. Titan shifted restlessly in the back, as if even the air here unsettled him. Inside, the house smelled of fried oil and lemon polish, the kind of ordinary comfort that clashed too hard against the words he had to deliver. Savannah's mother, Denise, was at the kitchen table, hands clenched white around a chipped coffee mug. Her husband, Carl, stood behind her, shoulders hunched, eyes bloodshot and hard. Both of them looked up when Mark entered, hat in his hands. "Well," Carl's voice was hoarse. No greeting, just a question. Mark hesitated, the evidence bag heavy in his pocket. He had no good words, but silence would cut worse. "I found her clothes," he said finally. His throat burned as the words left him. "In the ruins." Denise gasped, the mug slipping from her grip and clattering to the floor. Coffee spread like blood across the linoleum. "What do you mean you found her clothes?" Carl's voice rose sharp. "Where's my daughter?" Mark set the bag on the table. Inside, the hoodie and sneakers lay folded just as he'd found them. Carl's eyes fixed on them, his jaw working like he was chewing back rage. Denise pressed her fist to her mouth, sobbing. "I don't know yet," Mark admitted. There was no sign of her body. No sign of, he stopped himself before he said violence. No blood, but there was this. He pulled out the note. Carl snatched it from his hands before he could offer it properly. "Forgive us, Father, for what we brought here," Carl read aloud, spitting each word like a curse. Denise let out another broken sob. "Oh, God, Carl, don't start. Don't start." Carl rounded on her. "He finds us in a church. Our church. And you're telling me not to start?" Mark frowned. "Your church." Denise turned her wet eyes to him. "Years ago, before it burned. Carl's father preached there. Whole family went every Sunday." Carl slammed a hand against the wall, the plaster rattling. That place should have been torn down brick by brick after what happened. Mark's pulse ticked up. What had happened? Neither of them spoke at first. Carl's jaw worked. Denise stared at her lap. Finally, Denise whispered, "There was a fire. People said it was an accident. Others," she trailed off, shaking her head. "Others what?" Carl's eyes bored into Mark's. "You do well not to go digging, Deputy. That ruin swallows people. Always has." The silence that followed felt too heavy, too practiced. As if this wasn't the first time the words had been spoken in this house. Back at the station, the note sat under a plastic sleeve on Mark's desk. The handwriting was jagged. Hurried, not Savannah's. He'd seen her school assignments, bubbly letters dotted with hearts. This was older, much older. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. The building creaked around him in the quiet hours, the hum of the vending machine loud in the silence. He should have filed a report and gone home, but the words on the note clung to him. "Forgive us, Father, for what we brought here." What they brought, not what they did. Brought. He rubbed his eyes, exhaustion clawing at the edges of his focus. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed across the empty county roads. Fading into nothing, Titan shifted at his feet, restless. Mark glanced down. The dog had been unsettled since they left the ruins, pacing the corners of the room like he expected something to slip through the walls. "All right, boy," Mark muttered. "You're spooking me." He bent to scratch behind Titan's ears. The shepherd's fur bristled, his eyes fixed on the darkened hallway leading to the cells. Mark froze. "Someone here," he called. No answer, just the hum of the lights. But Titan didn't move his gaze, didn't blink. Mark's hand drifted toward his holster, the unease coiling in his chest again. He stepped into the hall, boots echoing too loud against the linoleum. The cells were empty, shadows stretching long across the bars. Nothing. When he turned back, Titan was sitting in the middle of the squad room, staring at him, almost accusing. The next morning, Mark sat in the diner on Main Street, a bitter coffee cooling in front of him. The chatter of locals buzzed around the room, farmers griping about weather, truckers passing through. Ordinary noise. But when he mentioned Savannah Keller's name, the noise dulled. Heads turned, eyes flicked, then looked away too quickly. The waitress, Brenda, leaned close, her voice low. "You found her out there?" "Not her," Mark said. "Just her clothes." Brenda crossed herself. "That church ruins again. I told my boys never to go near it." "Why?" She gave him a look, as if the question itself was foolish. "Because nothing good ever came out of that place. Not when it was built, not when it burned, and sure as hell not now." Mark studied her. "What happened when it burned?" Her mouth pressed in. "Ask your daddy. He knows." The words landed like a stone in his gut. That night, Mark drove out to his father's place. The old man lived alone on the edge of town, his farmhouse weathered, the paint peeling in long strips. The porch light buzzed with moths. Inside, his father sat in his recliner, the TV muttering low. His once broad frame had shrunk into the chair, but his eyes were still sharp, still cutting. "Boy," he said by way of greeting, "you look like hell." Mark didn't waste time. "What happened at the church?" His father's face hardened. "You went there." "I didn't have a choice." "Girl's missing." A long silence. The old man dragged a hand across his face, muttering something under his breath. Finally, he said, "That place should have stayed buried." "What happened?" Mark pressed. His father's eyes flicked to the window, the dark pressing against the glass. "Your granddaddy was sheriff when it happened. Fire started in the basement during a revival. Folks said it was an accident. Candle tipped wiring bad. But there were whispers, things brought in, rituals, not sermons. That's why people stopped going before the fire. They said the pastor, Carl Keller's father, was preaching things that weren't in the Bible, things that didn't belong in God's house. Mark's chest tightened. You believe that? His father's eyes met his, sharp as broken glass. I believe we buried 5 coffins after that fire, and none of them looked the way they should have. Skin blackened, but not burned, like something sucked the life out of them. The words lodged in Mark's throat. His father leaned forward, voice low. You stay out of that place, Mark. You hear me? Nothing you're chasing is worth what it will take from you. But Mark had seen Savannah's folded clothes. He'd heard the laugh that wasn't a laugh. He knew it was already too late to stay out. 2 nights later, a storm rolled in. Lightning split the horizon, thunder shaking the ground. Mark was on patrol, tightened in the passenger seat, when the radio crackled to life. Hanlon, you out there? It was dispatch, her voice tight. We got a call. Another one missing. Mark's gut turned cold. Who? Brenda's youngest, 12 years old. Said he never came home after fishing the creek. Mark's grip tightened on the wheel. The creek ran less than a mile from the church. He slammed the cruiser into gear. As he pulled onto the mud-slick road, Titan barked once sharp, almost urgent. His gaze locked ahead, ears pricked, body bristling. Through the downpour, the ruins appeared, lightning etching them into stark relief. The spire clawed at the sky, black against the storm. And standing in the doorway, illuminated for a fraction of a second by the flash, was a figure, small, barefoot, Savannah. Then darkness swallowed her again. The rain came down in sheets, battering the cruiser as Mark pulled into clearing. Titan leapt out before he'd even killed the engine, barking furiously, straining toward the ruins. Lightning split the sky, and for an instant, the broken church loomed like a blackened carcass. Mark's pulse pounded. He had seen her, Savannah, standing there, barefoot, pale. Was it her, or something wearing her face? Savannah! His voice was nearly drowned by the storm. Savannah, it's Deputy Hanlon. Come here. Nothing. Only the wind shrieking through the jagged stone. Titan whined, tugging him forward. Mark gritted his teeth and followed. Inside, water dripped to the collapsed roof, puddles forming across the stone floor. His flashlight beam shook as it swept the nave. The clothes were gone, the altar bare, but she was there. Savannah stood at the far end, hair plastered to her face, arms limp at her sides. She didn't shiver, didn't blink, didn't look like a 12-year-old lost in a storm. She looked empty. Savannah, Mark said softly, lowering his gun hand, raising the light. It's me. You're safe now. Your parents are waiting. She tilted her head, eyes black in the beam, her lips parted, but the voice that came out wasn't hers. You shouldn't have come back, Hanlon. His stomach dropped. The voice was older. Male. Carl Keller's. Mark froze. Carl. Savannah's mouth twisted, too wide for her face. He tried to call you away, but you wouldn't move, just like the dog. Titan growled, teeth bared, body rigid. Mark's heart slammed. What did you do to her? The thing tilted Savannah's head again, almost curious. We didn't take her. We opened the way. She walked through, just like the others. The storm cracked above, rattling the ruin. Mark's grip tightened on the flashlight. Others. The thing's grin widened. Ask your father. Ask him what your family left buried here. The words rattled inside him. His father, his warnings. The coffins. The fire. And then another voice came from the dark behind him. Mark. He spun, light slicing across the nave. Carl Keller stood in the shadows, rain plastering his shirt to his chest, eyes hollow and wild. Carl. The man stepped forward, hand shaking. I told you not to dig. What the hell's happening? Mark snapped. Where's Savannah? What did you bring here? Carl's jaw clenched, tears mixing with the rain. My father. He thought he was a prophet. Thought he could draw something holy down from the other side. But it wasn't holy, Mark. It was hungry. When the fire came, I thought it was finished. I thought it died with him. But it didn't. It stayed. His eyes lifted to the girl. And now it wants our children. Savannah's face shifted, grinning, then blank, then grinning again. The thing inside her spoke with Carl's father's voice. You can't shut a door that's already open. Mark's skin crawled. He raised his gun. Get out of her. The laugh that came wasn't human. Titan lunged first. The shepherd leapt at the girl, teeth snapping. Mark shouted, too late. The thing in Savannah moved impossibly fast, faster than any child should. She slammed Titan against the altar. The dog yelped, but he wasn't finished. He scrambled up, snarling, eyes locked on her as if he'd known this fight all his life. Carl staggered forward, tears streaming. Take me, he screamed. Leave her. Take me instead. The girl's head turned sharply toward him. We already did. Lightning split the roof open, and for a fraction of a second Mark saw it. Another face layered beneath Savannah's, something gaunt and ancient, with eyes like black pits. He fired. The shot cracked through the nave, deafening in the storm. Savannah jerked, the grin shattering into a scream that wasn't hers. The sound split stone, shook rafters, rattled Mark's bones. Titan leapt again, dragging her down, teeth clamped on her arm. The thing writhed, voice breaking into static and whispers. You can't close it, you can't. But then it faltered. Savannah's small body convulsed, and with a final shriek that sounded like fire roaring through wood, it tore free. A shadow, a shape, a black wind ripping from her chest. It streaked upward, through the broken roof, swallowed by the storm. Then silence. Savannah lay limp on the stones, rain washing blood from her shoulder. Carl collapsed beside her, sobbing. Baby girl, baby girl. Mark knelt, pressing his fingers to her throat. A pulse, weak, fluttering, but there. Titan stood trembling, chest heaving, blood on his muzzle. He pressed against Mark's side, whimpering. It's over, Mark whispered, though he wasn't sure if it was true. They brought Savannah out of the ruins just before dawn. The storm had broken, leaving the world heavy and dripping, the sky pale with the first streaks of morning. Paramedics met them at the clearing. Carl rode with his daughter, his face hollow with guilt, relief, and something darker. Mark stood by the cruiser, Titan leaning against his leg. His hands shook as he lit a cigarette he didn't need. He hadn't smoked in years. Behind him, the ruin crouched silent, steam rising from its stones like breath. His father's words echoed again. Nothing you're chasing is worth what it'll take from you. But it had already taken something. Later, back at his father's farmhouse, Mark stood on the porch, the dog at his side. The old man opened the door, eyes narrowing at his son's face. You went back, he said flatly. Mark nodded. I saw it. I heard it. And I think you knew more than you told me. His father didn't argue. He stared past Mark, toward the horizon, where the church's broken spire clawed faintly against the dawn. We thought we could bury it, the old man whispered. But things like that don't stay buried. They wait. They always wait. Mark swallowed. Then we make sure it can't come back. His father looked at him for a long moment, then nodded once, slow. If you're willing to carry that weight. Mark glanced down at Titan, the dog scarred but steady at his side, then back at the ruin in the distance. I don't have a choice anymore, he said. That night, Mark sat in silence on his porch. The county spread dark and quiet around him. Titan dozed at his feet, finally calm, his breathing deep and even. From the road, the town looked ordinary again, the diner lights glowing warm, a truck rumbling past, kids laughing in the distance. But Mark knew better. He knew there were things in the world that never left, things that wore faces and whispered to the walls. And he knew that sometimes the only thing holding them back was a man too tired to run and a dog too stubborn to move. He reached down, scratched Titan's ears. The shepherd stirred, eyes opening just enough to glance up at him, then close again. For the first time in days, Mark let himself breathe. It wasn't peace. It wasn't victory. But it was enough.